This video addresses one of the most delicate and painful subjects that Edgar Cayce ever touched, the journey of the soul after suicide. Before we move forward, I want to make something very clear. What you are about to hear is shared with the deepest respect for those who have suffered, for families who have carried this pain, and for anyone who has ever faced the weight of despair. Cayce never spoke about this subject lightly. His words were meant to guide, to clarify, and to offer hope, even when the truth was difficult to hear. And today we will revisit some of those documented readings, always staying faithful to what he actually revealed. If this theme resonates with you, I invite you to stay until the end of the video, reflect deeply, and also share your perspective in the comments below. I'll personally mark your comment with a little heart, because your voice matters here. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe, so this message can reach more people who might need it. In one of his most striking readings during the 1930s, at the height of the Great Depression, Cayce was asked about what happens to a soul that chooses to end its own life. His response was both compassionate and sobering. He explained that the soul does not escape suffering by leaving the body. Instead, it enters a dimension where it must confront, even more intensely, the lessons it tried to abandon. According to him, suicide interrupts the natural rhythm of the soul's journey, creating a form of spiritual disorientation. But, and this is crucial, Cayce never described eternal punishment. He insisted that every soul remains loved, guided, and given opportunities to heal, though the path may be much longer and heavier after such an act. His words carried a sense of gravity, but also a reminder of divine patience. During one particular session in Virginia Beach, Cayce spoke about how souls who die by suicide often linger close to the earthly plane, still attached to the emotions, places, and even the bodies they left behind. He described them as being near yet unseen, struggling to understand what had happened. For families who asked him about loved ones who had taken their own lives, his readings were filled with both honesty and tenderness. He did not hide the difficulties faced by these souls, but he also emphasized that prayer, love, and sincere intercession could help them find light and move forward. For Cayce, no soul was ever truly abandoned. Divine mercy was always present, even in the darkest circumstances. Cayce's descriptions often shocked those listening. He would say that a suicide soul could remain in a state of confusion, replaying the circumstances that led to their act, almost like being caught in a loop of memory and emotion. This was not described as punishment from an external force, but as a natural consequence of the mind and spirit being unable to detach from unresolved experiences. And yet, in these very moments of despair, Cayce affirmed that guides, loved ones from the other side, and higher beings of light would work tirelessly to bring understanding and healing. The process could take years, even decades in the spiritual sense, but the goal was never condemnation. The goal was restoration. At times, Cayce warned that repeated patterns of despair could carry over into future incarnations. He explained that the lessons a soul avoids by suicide are not erased, but postponed, often reappearing in the next life with similar challenges. This perspective reframed the act not as an escape, but as a delay where suffering might resurface in a new body, a new time, and under new circumstances. For him, the soul was on a long journey of growth, and no single act, no matter how tragic, could sever it from God's ultimate love and purpose. He placed immense weight on the importance of patience, perseverance, and seeking help in this life, rather than trying to cut the journey short. Cayce also pointed out something that many people found surprisingly comforting. He said that the prayers of the living truly reach the souls of those who have died by suicide. According to him, when a family prays with sincerity, or when friends send thoughts of compassion and forgiveness, these energies act as bridges of light that guide the disoriented soul toward healing. During one reading that deeply moved those present, Cayce explained that no thought of love is ever wasted. Every sincere prayer becomes a force that surrounds and uplifts the struggling spirit. This perspective transformed the way many families faced their grief. Instead of believing their loved one was forever lost, they began to understand that they could still contribute to that soul's journey toward peace. At another moment, during a session in Hopkinsville, Cayce was asked if suicide was ever justified. His answer was consistent and firm. The soul is never improved by cutting short its earthly experience. He said that life, even in the midst of unbearable suffering, carries opportunities for growth that cannot be replicated elsewhere. To end life prematurely was to interrupt an assignment, leaving unfinished lessons that would inevitably return. Yet, even as he stressed the seriousness of suicide, his tone was never cruel. He emphasized again and again that divine mercy surrounds all souls, and that God does not abandon anyone, not even those who felt abandoned by the world. The key message was both challenging and hopeful. The journey may be longer, but healing remains possible. Cayce's teachings during the war years reinforced this same understanding. With so many lives being lost to violence, despair, and chaos, questions about suicide became even more urgent. Families approached him in tears, desperate to know the fate of their loved ones. In those readings, he would often describe how the soul must return again to complete what was left undone. But he also offered hope, saying that God's patience is eternal, and that even after the darkest decisions, the soul retains the spark of divine origin. What was needed, he explained, was not judgment, but compassion, from both this world and the next. His words encouraged many to shift their perspective from fear to prayerful support. For Cayce, one of the greatest tragedies of suicide was the loneliness the soul feels immediately after crossing. He described how such souls often expect relief, but instead find themselves in a strange in-between state, aware of being outside the body, yet not fully ready to enter the realms of light. This confusion could feel like wandering in a fog, searching for direction. But even in this fog, Cayce said, there are helping presences. He spoke of spiritual guides, beings of light, and even relatives who had already passed, all working to reach the lost soul. These presences could not force the soul forward, but they could patiently stand by, waiting for the moment when the soul opens to receive help. And this is where Cayce introduced a perspective that touched many hearts. He reminded families that their continued love, forgiveness, and remembrance created channels of energy that made it easier for the lost soul to see and accept help. In other words, the connection between the living and the dead did not break with suicide. It became even more crucial. Those who carried grief could choose to transform it into healing energy for their loved one. This teaching not only gave families hope, but also gave them a sense of responsibility, a way to actively participate in the redemption of a soul they thought had been lost forever. In some of his most profound readings, Cayce made it clear that suicide was never the end of the story. He explained that while the act brings immense confusion, the soul eventually reaches a point of awakening. That moment may come slowly, after years of wandering in a state of unrest, or more quickly if surrounded by love and prayer. But when it comes, the soul recognizes that life cannot be escaped, it can only be transformed. Cayce described this awakening as both painful and liberating. Painful because the soul sees clearly the weight of its choice, but liberating because it also realizes that the door to redemption was never closed. This was the balance he always brought, honesty about consequences, but also assurance of divine mercy. He also reminded people that suicide often arises from deep suffering, illness, or despair, and that God sees the heart behind the act. Unlike human judgment, divine understanding does not condemn without compassion. In one reading, Cayce said that the soul who takes its own life is not cast into eternal punishment, but rather into a process of confronting what was left unfinished. He compared it to leaving school before graduation. You may avoid one exam, but sooner or later, you must return to complete the lesson. This metaphor helped many understand that suicide does not erase responsibility, but it also does not erase hope. The journey continues, and the soul is never outside the reach of divine love. Cayce often connected this subject to reincarnation. He explained that the challenges avoided by suicide would often reappear in a future life, sometimes with even greater intensity. A person who ended life due to poverty, illness, or broken relationships might face similar patterns again until the lesson was truly learned. Yet he emphasized that this was not punishment, but simply the law of cause and effect in action. The universe, he said, is built on balance, and every unfinished task eventually returns to be completed. This teaching was sobering, but it also gave meaning to suffering, showing that even in tragedy there was purpose and a path forward. It is important to note that Cayce never spoke about this subject to inspire fear. His intent was to awaken responsibility and compassion. He urged people to understand that while suicide creates real challenges, the greater truth is that no soul is ever abandoned. In fact, he said that the souls of those who die this way often become deeply aware of the value of life, and when they reincarnate, they carry within them a stronger determination to endure and to grow. In this sense, even the darkest choices can eventually lead to greater light. His perspective was one of both realism and redemption, a call to honor life while also trusting in God's infinite patience. For those listening in his time, and for us today, these words carry a heavy but important message. Life is sacred, even when unbearable pain makes it seem impossible to continue. Cayce's readings remind us that suicide does not end the soul's journey, it only complicates it. But more than that, they remind us that every soul, no matter how lost, is held by divine love. And for families and friends left behind, he gave a clear mission: pray, forgive, and send light, because your love still reaches them. And here, I want to pause to invite you. If you feel this message touches your heart, let us build a circle of compassion together. Leave a comment sharing your reflection on this theme, or simply write a word of light for those souls in pain. I'll personally mark your comment with a heart, because together we can transform grief into hope. And if you haven't yet, like this video, share it, and subscribe, so that these teachings can reach more people who might need them now. Cayce also emphasized that suicide often results from the crushing weight of isolation. He said that one of the greatest illusions a soul can experience while on earth is the belief that it is alone in its suffering. In his view, this illusion can grow so strong that it blinds a person to the truth, that help, love, and guidance are always available. During a session that changed the life of a grieving family, Cayce explained that many who take their own lives believed, in their final moments, that there was no other way. But from the perspective of the soul, once free from the body, they come to see that doors of possibility had always existed. The tragedy lies not only in the act itself, but in the blindness that precedes it. This teaching struck deeply because it shifted the focus from condemnation to compassion, reminding families to respond with love instead of judgment. He also described how souls who die by suicide can become intensely aware of the grief they leave behind. Far from escaping pain, they often witness the sorrow of loved ones with unbearable clarity. Cayce said this awareness can feel like carrying a doubled burden, the weight of their own despair and the pain they cause to others. Yet, he insisted, this awareness is also the seed of healing. By seeing the ripple effects of their act, the soul begins to understand the sacredness of life and the importance of endurance. What begins as torment slowly becomes a lesson that deepens the soul's compassion. In this way, even despair can lead to growth, though through a long and difficult path. Another key point Cayce made was that suicide never erases divine love. He rejected the idea of eternal damnation. Instead, he taught that every soul is a child of God, and no action, however tragic, can sever that connection. He often repeated that God is patient beyond human imagination. Even when a soul wanders in confusion, lost in the shadow of its own decision, God's light remains constant. The soul may resist it, may not see it, may even run from it, but eventually it will return. This message gave hope to countless families who felt condemned alongside their loved one. Cayce showed them that despair is temporary, but love is eternal. During the years after World War II, when many families were broken by loss and trauma, Cayce's words on suicide became a source of comfort. He reminded them that despair does not define the soul forever. He also encouraged people to see the importance of service to others as a way to prevent such tragedies. According to him, when we extend compassion, kindness, and presence to those around us, we help prevent the illusion of isolation that drives many to suicide. In his eyes, the fight against despair was not only spiritual, but also communal. By living with empathy and supporting one another, we participate in God's work of saving souls even before they reach the breaking point. This message remains as relevant now as it was then, calling us to create communities of love where no one feels invisible. Cayce also explained that suicide places the soul in a state where time feels very different from the earthly experience. He said that while on earth we measure time in hours, days, and years, on the spiritual plane after suicide, moments of confusion can feel like long stretches that seem endless. The soul may remain trapped in a loop of memory, replaying the circumstances of its choice, not as punishment, but as a natural result of unresolved consciousness. However, he assured those listening that these states are never permanent. Eventually, with the help of divine guidance and the prayers of loved ones, the soul begins to break free from the cycle and move toward understanding. This truth brought comfort to families, reminding them that although the process could be long, it always leads toward light. In some sessions, Cayce even described how these souls are gently guided into environments of healing on the other side. He spoke of realms where compassionate beings work with confused souls, almost like spiritual hospitals. These spaces are not places of fire or eternal torment, but of gradual recovery, where the soul is taught, nurtured, and encouraged to face what it left unfinished. Cayce emphasized that the love of God is more like that of a patient parent than a harsh judge. The focus is not on condemning the soul, but on helping it find strength to continue its eternal journey. This vision stood in stark contrast to more fearful religious teachings of his time, offering instead a message of responsibility balanced with hope. Families who came to Cayce often carried unbearable guilt, wondering if they could have prevented their loved one's death. Cayce's words consistently offered them relief. He said that while we each carry responsibility for our choices, no single act of another person defines the eternal destiny of their soul. He urged families to release self-condemnation and instead focus their energy on sending love, prayers, and forgiveness. This, he explained, not only helps the departed soul, but also begins to heal the hearts of those left behind. His message was clear. Grief can either chain us in sorrow or become a channel of healing. The choice belongs to us. At the same time, Cayce never minimized the seriousness of suicide. He wanted people to understand that life's challenges, no matter how unbearable, are part of a larger plan that cannot be escaped without consequences. He compared life's struggles to medicine, bitter, difficult to swallow, but necessary for healing and growth. To refuse the lesson is to delay the cure. Yet he always balanced this with compassion, reminding everyone that God's patience ensures that no delay lasts forever. Eventually, every soul returns to the lessons it must learn, and every soul is restored. His teachings held a delicate balance, sobering in their honesty, yet radiant in their mercy. One of the most moving elements in Cayce's readings was his insistence that love never stops working. He said that even when a soul has fallen into despair and chosen suicide, the bonds of love from family, friends, and even strangers remain active. He described love as an energy that transcends the veil between worlds, reaching the most isolated corners of the spiritual realm. According to Cayce, this is why acts of kindness, prayer, and forgiveness are never wasted. They become guiding lights that the confused soul can eventually see and follow. He even suggested that souls who are lifted by these energies often return in future lives with a deeper sensitivity to compassion, because they have experienced firsthand how love can rescue even in the darkest hour. Cayce also explained that while suicide complicates the soul's path, it does not define its eternity. He compared it to a student who leaves the classroom before finishing the exam. The test is not erased, it simply waits. When the soul reincarnates, the unfinished lessons will appear again, often with the same themes: loneliness, illness, rejection, or loss, until the spirit learns endurance and discovers strength through faith. Though this can sound heavy, Cayce always balanced it with hope. He said that these repeated lessons are not punishments, but opportunities for greater growth, because the soul becomes stronger with each attempt. Over time, what once felt unbearable can transform into a source of wisdom and compassion for others. In his view, one of the most sacred responsibilities of the living is to stand as intercessors for those who died by suicide. Cayce encouraged families to pray not only for peace but also for clarity and courage for the departed soul. He insisted that these prayers create actual conditions in the spiritual dimension, like bridges that help the wandering soul cross into the realms of light. This teaching empowered many who once felt helpless, giving them a role in their loved one's healing process. It also reminded them that love is an active force, not just a memory. By choosing to forgive, bless, and uplift the soul, they could help shorten its time of confusion and guide it toward hope. Finally, Cayce left us with a truth that ties everything together. No matter how painful the act of suicide, no soul is ever abandoned. Divine patience outlasts every shadow, and God's mercy is larger than human despair. He acknowledged the sorrow, the confusion, and the delays, but always returned to this truth, that every soul, without exception, is destined for healing, for growth, and for reunion with the Creator. This message still echoes today as both a warning and a promise. Life should not be cut short, but even when it is, redemption remains possible. And now, as we close this reflection, I invite you once more. If this message touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments, and I will mark each one with a heart to honor your voice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so these teachings of Cayce can continue to inspire and bring light to those who need it most. Edgar Cayce, known as America's sleeping prophet, provided some of the most fascinating insights about consciousness during coma states through his psychic readings. His work, preserved by the Association for Research and Enlightenment, offers compelling perspectives on where souls journey when the physical body lies unconscious. These revelations challenge conventional understanding of consciousness and suggest profound spiritual activities occurring beyond our physical awareness. This topic resonates deeply with anyone who has watched a loved one in a coma, wondering about their inner experience and spiritual state. Medical science can monitor brain activity and bodily functions, but it cannot map the soul's journey during these mysterious states of suspended consciousness. Cayce's readings suggest that what appears as unconsciousness to us may actually represent heightened spiritual activity and purposeful soul travel to other dimensions of existence. Throughout this exploration, we will examine Cayce's specific readings about coma states, his descriptions of soul travel during unconsciousness, and the spiritual purposes these experiences serve. We'll investigate how these insights align with near-death experiences and modern consciousness research. Additionally, we'll explore the healing and learning opportunities that souls may encounter during these profound states of altered consciousness. My research into Cayce's work spans over 2 decades, including extensive study of the original readings housed at the Association for Research and Enlightenment. Having personally witnessed family members in coma states, I've found Cayce's insights both comforting and enlightening. His readings offer hope and understanding during some of life's most challenging and mysterious moments, providing spiritual context for these profound human experiences. Understanding Cayce's revelations requires exploring the fundamental nature of consciousness itself and how it operates independently of physical brain function. The prophet's readings suggest that consciousness exists on multiple levels simultaneously, with the soul capable of extraordinary journeys when freed from normal waking constraints. This foundational understanding opens doorways to comprehending the magnificent spiritual adventures that may unfold during coma states. Edgar Cayce's readings consistently portrayed consciousness as multidimensional, operating simultaneously on physical, mental, and spiritual planes. According to his insights, the soul is not confined to the physical body, but can travel freely through various realms of existence. This concept forms the foundation for understanding how consciousness functions during coma states, when normal brain activity is severely diminished, yet the soul remains vibrantly active in other dimensions. The Cayce material describes consciousness as composed of 3 primary levels: the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the superconscious or soul mind. During waking states, these levels work together through the physical brain, but during coma, the soul consciousness becomes liberated from physical limitations. This liberation allows for enhanced spiritual perception, communication with other souls, and access to higher realms of knowledge and healing that are typically unavailable during normal waking consciousness. Different spiritual traditions have recognized similar concepts throughout history, from Tibetan Buddhism's descriptions of consciousness during the Bardo state to ancient Egyptian beliefs about soul travel during sleep and death. Shamanic traditions worldwide acknowledge the soul's ability to journey beyond physical boundaries, particularly during altered states of consciousness. These cross-cultural parallels suggest universal recognition of consciousness operating independently from physical brain function, supporting Cayce's revolutionary insights about coma experiences. Consider consciousness like a radio capable of receiving multiple frequencies simultaneously. During normal waking states, we're tuned primarily to the physical frequency, but during coma, the soul radio shifts to spiritual frequencies normally filtered out by brain activity. Just as a radio continues functioning even when switched to different stations, consciousness remains active and purposeful even when disconnected from normal physical awareness and responsiveness. This understanding of multi-level consciousness sets the stage for exploring the specific spiritual activities and destinations that Cayce described souls experiencing during coma states. His readings reveal that rather than existing in void or nothingness, souls in coma engage in profound learning experiences, healing processes, and spiritual communications that serve important purposes for their evolutionary growth and preparation for either return to physical life or transition to spiritual realms. Cayce's readings revealed that souls in coma states often engage in intensive spiritual education and healing activities across multiple dimensions of existence. According to his insights, these souls frequently attend what he described as spiritual schools or healing centers in higher realms, where they receive instruction from advanced spiritual teachers and undergo processes of soul purification. Rather than experiencing unconsciousness, these individuals participate in highly conscious activities that serve their spiritual evolution and prepare them for important decisions about their earthly existence. The sleeping prophet described coma patients as often serving as bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds, facilitating communication and healing for both realms. Their souls might work as spiritual messengers, helping other transitioning souls or providing comfort to grieving families through dreams and intuitive impressions. Some readings indicated that souls in prolonged comas chose these experiences before incarnation as opportunities for accelerated spiritual growth and service, transforming apparent tragedy into purposeful spiritual work. Cayce's readings addressed variations in coma experiences based on the individual's spiritual development, the circumstances causing the coma, and the soul's specific lessons or missions. Some souls used coma time for deep healing of karmic patterns, while others engaged in advanced spiritual study or preparation for significant life changes upon awakening. The duration and depth of coma states often correlated with the complexity of spiritual work being undertaken, with each case serving unique purposes in the soul's eternal journey. However, Cayce also acknowledged that not all coma experiences involve such elevated activities, noting that souls heavily attached to material existence might remain closer to the physical plane, experiencing confusion or distress. His readings emphasized that spiritual development and soul preparation significantly influence the quality and purpose of coma experiences. Some individuals required extensive spiritual assistance from guides and loved ones to navigate these states effectively and derive maximum benefit from the experience. These profound insights into coma consciousness lead us to examine the specific spiritual realms and activities that Cayce described souls accessing during these mysterious states. His detailed descriptions of soul travel, spiritual learning centers, and communication with advanced beings provide fascinating glimpses into the rich inner life that continues even when physical awareness appears completely absent to outside observers. Edgar Cayce described souls in coma as traveling to various spiritual realms that exist in higher dimensions beyond physical perception. These realms include healing temples where souls undergo energetic restoration, educational centers where advanced knowledge is imparted, and meeting places where souls connect with guides, deceased loved ones, and other spiritual beings. According to his readings, these destinations are not fantasies, but actual dimensional spaces where consciousness operates according to spiritual rather than physical laws. The healing temples mentioned in Cayce's readings serve as cosmic hospitals where souls receive treatment for spiritual ailments, karmic wounds, and energetic imbalances that manifest as physical illness or life challenges. Souls in coma often spend time in these temples, receiving intensive healing that addresses root causes of their conditions. The treatments involve light therapy, sound healing, color therapy, and energy work, administered by advanced healing entities who understand the soul's complete history and needs. Educational realms described by Cayce function as universities of spiritual wisdom, where souls study universal laws, explore their life purposes, and receive guidance about future paths. Souls in coma might attend lectures by ascended masters, participate in group discussions with other evolving souls, or receive individual mentoring about their spiritual development. This education often focuses on lessons related to their current life challenges, helping them gain perspective and wisdom that will benefit their earthly existence. Communication centers in these spiritual realms allow souls to connect with loved ones both living and deceased, facilitating healing for relationships and families. Souls in coma often serve as intermediaries, helping resolve conflicts, conveying messages of love and forgiveness, and providing comfort to grieving relatives through dreams and intuitive impressions. These communications frequently result in remarkable healing and reconciliation within families, even when the coma patient appears completely unresponsive physically. The richness of these spiritual experiences provides crucial context for understanding why some souls choose to remain in coma states for extended periods. Rather than being trapped or lost, they may be engaged in profound work that requires time and deep focus. This perspective shifts our understanding from viewing coma as merely medical crisis to recognizing potential spiritual opportunity, opening our awareness to the meaningful activities that may be unfolding beyond physical perception. According to Edgar Cayce's readings, coma experiences serve multiple spiritual purposes that extend beyond individual healing to encompass family dynamics, karmic resolution, and collective spiritual growth. Many souls choose coma states as opportunities to complete unfinished spiritual business, heal generational patterns, or provide profound learning experiences for their loved ones. These experiences often catalyze spiritual awakening in family members, teaching lessons about unconditional love, patience, faith, and the eternal nature of consciousness that transcend physical limitations. Cayce described how souls in coma frequently work to balance karmic debts and resolve past life conflicts that have created current life challenges. The spiritual freedom experienced during coma allows souls to directly address these issues with other souls involved, facilitating healing and forgiveness that might take lifetimes to accomplish through normal physical interaction. This karmic work often explains the timing and circumstances surrounding coma experiences, revealing deeper spiritual purposes behind apparent medical crises. The readings revealed that some souls use coma states as preparation periods for major life transitions, whether returning to physical life with renewed purpose or preparing for transition to spiritual realms. During these preparation phases, souls review their life experiences, integrate lessons learned, and receive guidance about optimal timing for their next phase. This spiritual preparation ensures that whatever choice they make serves their highest good and contributes to the spiritual evolution of all involved. Family members and caregivers often report profound spiritual experiences while caring for coma patients, including enhanced intuition, meaningful dreams, and sensing the patient's spiritual presence. These experiences reflect the coma patient's continued spiritual activity and their efforts to maintain connection with loved ones. Cayce's readings suggest that these communications provide comfort, guidance, and healing for families while serving the spiritual growth of all participants in these sacred experiences. Understanding these deeper purposes transforms our relationship with coma states from fear and helplessness to reverence and spiritual opportunity. This shift in perspective opens us to receiving the gifts and lessons that these experiences offer, while also preparing us to explore how we can best support souls during these profound spiritual journeys through prayer, meditation, and conscious communication efforts. Edgar Cayce's readings emphasize that souls in coma remain fully conscious and capable of communication even when their physical bodies appear unresponsive. The sleeping prophet recommended talking to coma patients naturally, reading to them, playing meaningful music and maintaining loving physical contact because their souls perceive and benefit from these interactions. According to his insights, the spiritual awareness of coma patients often becomes heightened rather than diminished, allowing them to sense emotions, intentions, and spiritual energies of those around them with remarkable clarity. The most effective communication methods described by Cayce involve heart-centered approaches rather than purely verbal communication. Sending loving thoughts, practicing meditation in their presence, and engaging in prayer creates energetic bridges that souls in coma can easily perceive and respond to through various means. Many families report receiving responses through dreams, synchronicities, changes in the patient's vital signs, or subtle physical movements that seem to correspond with specific communications or visits from particular people. Cayce's readings provided specific guidance for establishing communication with souls in coma through meditation and dream states. He recommended family members quiet their minds, send loving thoughts, and remain open to receiving impressions, images, or emotional communications from their loved one's soul. These communications often provide insights into the patient's spiritual condition, their needs, and sometimes information about their likely recovery or transition plans that can guide family decisions and healing approaches. Musical therapy emerged as particularly powerful in Cayce's recommendations, with specific types of music serving as bridges between dimensions. Classical music, especially pieces with spiritual themes, hymns, and personally meaningful songs, can reach souls in coma and provide comfort, healing, and communication opportunities. The readings suggested that music creates vibrational pathways that transcend physical limitations, allowing direct soul-to-soul connection that bypasses normal communication barriers imposed by the coma state. However, Cayce also cautioned that negative emotions, conflicts, and chaotic environments could disturb souls in coma and potentially interfere with their spiritual work. He emphasized maintaining peaceful, loving atmospheres around coma patients and resolving family conflicts away from their presence. This awareness of the soul's continued sensitivity and spiritual activity provides foundation for understanding the healing approaches and supportive practices that can most effectively assist souls during their coma journeys. Edgar Cayce's readings provided comprehensive healing approaches for supporting souls in coma states that address physical, mental, and spiritual dimensions simultaneously. His holistic methodology recognized that effective healing must reach the soul level, where the primary spiritual work is occurring, while also supporting the physical body's maintenance and potential recovery. These approaches combine traditional medical care with spiritual practices, energy healing, and environmental modifications designed to support both physical stability and spiritual progression. Physical healing recommendations from Cayce included specific dietary support for coma patients, emphasizing easily digestible nutrients that maintain body functions without taxing the system. He often recommended particular vitamins, minerals, and herbal preparations that support nervous system function and cellular regeneration. Massage therapy, especially gentle techniques focusing on circulation and energy flow, appeared frequently in his readings as methods for maintaining physical connection between soul and body while supporting overall health maintenance. Energy healing. Practices featured prominently in Cayce's recommendations for supporting coma patients, including hands-on healing, prayer circles, and meditation sessions conducted in their presence. He described how healing energy transmitted through loving touch, focused intention, and spiritual prayer could reach souls in coma and provide strength for their spiritual work while encouraging physical healing. These energy practices often produced measurable improvements in vital signs, brain activity, and overall physical condition, even when traditional medical interventions showed limited effectiveness. Environmental healing factors recommended by Cayce included specific colors, lighting, and room arrangements that create supportive, energetic conditions for both spiritual work and physical recovery. He often suggested surrounding coma patients with particular colors that correspond to their healing needs, using natural lighting when possible, and maintaining clean, peaceful environments free from negative influences. Plants, crystals, and sacred objects might also serve as energy amplifiers that support the healing process on multiple levels. Cayce's readings acknowledged that healing outcomes vary significantly based on the soul's spiritual agenda and karmic patterns, emphasizing that true healing serves the soul's highest good rather than simply returning to previous physical conditions. Some souls might experience complete physical recovery with enhanced spiritual awareness, while others might transition peacefully to spiritual realms after completing their coma work. This understanding helps families approach healing with surrender and trust, supporting whatever outcome serves their loved one's spiritual evolution while maintaining hope and active participation in healing efforts. The remarkable similarities between Edgar Cayce's descriptions of coma experiences and modern near-death experience research provide compelling validation for his insights about consciousness during altered states. Near-death experiences frequently describe traveling to healing temples, meeting spiritual guides, attending educational sessions, and communicating with deceased loved ones, precisely the activities Cayce described souls in coma experiencing. These parallels suggest that both phenomena involve similar spiritual dimensions and consciousness expansion processes, with coma representing an extended version of the brief spiritual journeys reported in near-death experiences. Dr. Raymond Moody's groundbreaking research on near-death experiences, along with subsequent studies by researchers like Dr. Kenneth Ring and Dr. Pim van Lommel, documented thousands of cases where individuals experienced vivid consciousness during clinical death or deep coma states. Their findings consistently align with Cayce's earlier descriptions of soul travel, spiritual healing centers, life reviews, and communications with spiritual beings. This scientific validation lends credibility to Cayce's claims about the rich spiritual activities occurring during apparent unconsciousness. Both Cayce's readings and near-death research emphasize the transformative nature of these experiences, describing how souls return with enhanced spiritual awareness, reduced fear of death, and deeper understanding of life's purpose. Near-death experiencers often report receiving specific information about their life missions, healing instructions, or messages for family members, similar to the spiritual education and communication activities Cayce described for souls in coma. These transformative elements suggest that both experiences serve important evolutionary purposes for consciousness development. The healing aspects documented in near-death research also mirror Cayce's descriptions of spiritual healing temples and therapeutic activities during coma states. Many near-death experiencers report instantaneous healing of physical ailments, emotional traumas, and spiritual wounds during their brief sojourns in spiritual realms. This healing potential provides hope for understanding how extended coma experiences might facilitate even more comprehensive healing and spiritual development, given the additional time available for these transformative processes. Contemporary consciousness research increasingly supports the possibility that awareness can exist independently of brain function, challenging materialist assumptions about consciousness being produced solely by neural activity. Studies of terminal lucidity, shared death experiences, and verified perceptions during clinical death provide growing scientific evidence that consciousness operates beyond physical brain limitations. This research foundation strengthens confidence in Cayce's descriptions of conscious spiritual activities during coma states, bridging ancient wisdom with modern scientific inquiry. Edgar Cayce's readings extensively described the crucial role of spirit guides, guardian, angels, and deceased loved ones in assisting souls during coma experiences. According to his insights, no soul enters coma states alone or without spiritual support. Rather, these experiences are carefully orchestrated by teams of spiritual helpers who guide, protect, and educate souls throughout their journey. These guides serve as teachers, healers, and companions, ensuring that each soul receives appropriate assistance for their specific spiritual needs and evolutionary goals. The Cayce material identified different categories of spiritual helpers who specialize in various aspects of coma assistance. Some guides focus primarily on healing work, helping souls release karmic patterns and receive energetic restoration in spiritual healing centers. Educational guides specialize in teaching universal laws and life lessons, while communication specialists help souls maintain connection with earthly loved ones and facilitate important messages. Guardian entities provide protection during soul travel, ensuring safe navigation through different dimensional realms. Deceased family members and friends often serve as primary guides for souls in coma, providing familiar, loving presence during what might otherwise be overwhelming spiritual experiences. Cayce described how these beloved guides help orient souls to spiritual realms, introduce them to other helpers, and provide emotional support during challenging healing processes. Their presence offers comfort and continuity, bridging the gap between earthly existence and spiritual reality, while facilitating trust in the overall process. Advanced spiritual beings, including what Cayce termed masters and teachers, work with souls in coma to provide higher-level instruction and healing that serves their long-term spiritual evolution. These beings possess comprehensive understanding of universal laws, karmic patterns, and soul development processes, enabling them to provide precisely the guidance and healing each soul needs. Their wisdom helps souls make important decisions about their spiritual journey and earthly existence with full awareness of consequences and opportunities. The collaborative nature of spiritual assistance during coma states reflects the interconnected reality of all consciousness and the loving support available to every soul during times of spiritual transition and growth. Understanding this spiritual support system can provide tremendous comfort to families, knowing they're loved. Ones are receiving expert guidance and care from the most qualified helpers available. This awareness also opens opportunities for family members to connect with these guides through prayer and meditation, participating in the support network surrounding their loved one's spiritual journey. Edgar Cayce's readings revealed that coma states often provide optimal opportunities for souls to address karmic patterns and resolve past life conflicts that have created current life challenges. The spiritual freedom experienced during coma allows souls to directly encounter other souls involved in karmic relationships, facilitating healing and forgiveness processes that might require multiple lifetimes to accomplish through normal physical interaction. These karmic resolution sessions occur in specialized spiritual environments where souls can communicate clearly without the limitations and defenses typically present in physical relationships. The Sleeping Prophet described how souls in coma frequently participate in group healing sessions with other souls from their karmic family, including individuals from past lives who may or may not be currently incarnated. These gatherings allow for comprehensive resolution of complex relationship patterns, ancestral traumas, and collective karma that affects multiple generations. The healing achieved during these sessions often produces profound changes in family dynamics, even when the coma patient appears unconscious, as karmic patterns that have created conflict and suffering are dissolved at the spiritual level. Cayce's readings provided specific examples of how karmic healing during coma manifests in practical life changes. Families might experience unexpected reconciliation of long-standing conflicts, resolution of inherited behavioral patterns, or healing of genetic health issues that reflect karmic influences. These changes often begin during the coma period and continue unfolding after the patient either awakens or transitions, demonstrating the lasting impact of spiritual healing work accomplished during altered consciousness states. Past life therapeutic work during coma often involves souls revisiting traumatic experiences from previous incarnations to heal wounds that continue affecting current life circumstances. Cayce described how souls receive spiritual counseling and healing assistance to transform past life traumas into wisdom and strength. This process frequently explains why certain individuals experience comas following accidents or illnesses that mirror past life-death experiences, providing opportunities to heal ancient wounds and release limiting patterns. The comprehensive nature of karmic healing during coma states often requires significant time and spiritual energy, explaining why some souls remain in extended comas while completing this important work. Families who understand this perspective often report feeling guided to maintain life support longer than might seem medically reasonable, sensing intuitively that important spiritual work is still occurring. This karmic healing dimension adds profound meaning to coma experiences, transforming apparent tragedy into opportunities for multi-generational healing and spiritual evolution. Edgar Cayce's readings describe numerous subtle signs that indicate active spiritual work occurring in souls experiencing coma states, even when medical equipment shows minimal brain activity or physical responsiveness. These signs include changes in facial expression that suggest inner experiences, variations in breathing patterns that correspond to spiritual activities, and fluctuations in body temperature that reflect energetic shifts occurring during soul travel. Family members who maintain close connection with coma patients often develop sensitivity to these subtle indicators of ongoing spiritual consciousness. The Cayce material emphasized that souls in coma frequently attempt to communicate their spiritual experiences through whatever physical means remain available to them. Slight movements of fingers, changes in heart rate during specific conversations or music, and tears appearing during meaningful interactions all potentially represent efforts by the soul to indicate its continued awareness and participation in earthly relationships. These responses often occur in patterns that suggest intelligent communication rather than random physical reflexes. Dreams, experienced by family members and caregivers, often serve as communication channels for souls in coma, according to Cayce's insights. These dreams frequently feature the coma patient appearing healthy and communicating important messages about their condition, their spiritual work, or their needs. The accuracy and relevance of information received through these dreams often astound families, providing evidence that genuine communication is occurring between the soul in coma and their loved ones. Through spiritual channels, synchronicities and meaningful coincidences often increase dramatically around coma patients, reflecting the heightened spiritual activity and dimensional bridging occurring through their experience. Cayce described how souls in coma often orchestrate signs and symbols to communicate with family members, including unusual behavior in pets, meaningful mechanical malfunctions, and timely appearances of significant objects or people. These synchronicities frequently provide guidance, comfort, and confirmation of the soul's continued presence and activity. Environmental changes in the presence of coma patients can also indicate spiritual activity, including unusual electromagnetic phenomena affecting electronic equipment, temperature variations in specific areas of the room, and enhanced plant growth or animal behavior. Cayce's readings suggested that the intensive spiritual work occurring during coma creates energetic fields that influence the surrounding environment. Recognizing these signs helps families maintain connection with their loved one's spiritual journey and provides reassurance that meaningful activities continue despite physical appearances. Edgar Cayce's readings described how souls in extended coma states eventually reach critical decision points, where they must choose whether to return to physical life or transition permanently to spiritual realms. These decisions are not made impulsively, but result from careful consideration of multiple factors, including the completion of spiritual work undertaken during coma, the soul's overall life mission and learning objectives, and the needs of family members and other souls connected to their journey. The decision-making process often involves extensive consultation with spiritual guides and review of potential outcomes. The Sleeping Prophet explained that souls choosing to return to physical life typically do so because they have unfinished earthly purposes to fulfill, relationships to heal, or specific contributions to make that require physical embodiment. These returning souls often awaken with enhanced spiritual awareness, psychic abilities, and profound understanding of life's deeper meanings that serve their continued mission. Their recovery process frequently involves integrating spiritual experiences gained during coma with their earthly personality and life circumstances. Souls choosing to transition to spiritual realms have usually completed their earthly purposes or determined that their continued spiritual evolution can better occur in non-physical dimensions. Cayce described these transitions as peaceful, joyful processes where the soul releases its connection to the physical body after ensuring that family members receive necessary healing, messages, and spiritual preparation for the separation. These transitions often occur with remarkable timing that suggests conscious choice rather than medical inevitability. Family dynamics and emotional attachment significantly influence these spiritual decisions, according to Cayce's insights. Souls deeply concerned about family members might delay transition to provide additional healing, guidance, or gradual preparation for separation. Conversely, families who demonstrate spiritual understanding and release their loved one to make optimal choices often experience clearer communication and more peaceful outcomes, regardless of whether recovery or transition occurs. The timing of these decisions often correlates with external factors such as family readiness, completion of legal or practical affairs, and seasonal or anniversary dates that hold special significance. Cayce emphasized that these timing considerations reflect the soul's continued care for earthly relationships and responsibilities, demonstrating that spiritual decisions always consider the highest good of all involved parties. This understanding helps families recognize signs that important decisions are being contemplated and prepare themselves spiritually for either outcome. When souls choose to return from extended coma states, Edgar Cayce's readings describe the recovery process as involving complex integration of spiritual experiences with earthly consciousness and physical body functions. This integration period often requires patience and understanding from both the recovering individual and their family members, as the soul must readjust to physical limitations after experiencing spiritual freedom and expanded awareness. The returning consciousness frequently retains vivid memories of spiritual activities, guide communications, and healing experiences that can initially seem more real than earthly reality. Cayce observed that individuals recovering from significant coma experiences often demonstrate enhanced psychic abilities, deeper spiritual understanding, and altered priorities that reflect their soul-level learning during the unconscious period. These changes might include increased sensitivity to spiritual energy, ability to communicate with guides or deceased loved ones, prophetic dreams, and intuitive healing abilities that serve both their personal development and potential service to others. The integration of these expanded capacities requires careful nurturing and spiritual guidance. Physical recovery following coma often proceeds differently than medical professionals might expect, according to Cayce's insights, because the soul has been actively engaged in spiritual healing work that addresses root causes of health challenges. Some individuals experience remarkable healing of conditions that caused their coma, while others might recover with different health patterns that better serve their renewed spiritual purposes. The soul's spiritual work during coma can accelerate healing processes in unexpected ways. Emotional and psychological integration challenges frequently arise as recovering individuals attempt to communicate their spiritual experiences to family members who may not understand or believe their accounts. Cayce recommended that families approach these sharing sessions with open hearts and minds, recognizing that their loved one has undergone profound spiritual experiences that have transformed their consciousness. Creating supportive environments for processing and integrating these experiences helps ensure that the spiritual gains achieved during coma benefit the individual's ongoing earthly life. The long-term impacts of coma spiritual experiences often continue unfolding for years following recovery, as the individual gradually understands and applies the wisdom, healing, and guidance received during their spiritual journey. These ongoing revelations might influence career changes, relationship healing, creative expression, and spiritual service that reflects the soul's enhanced understanding of their earthly mission. Supporting this continued integration helps maximize the spiritual benefits gained through the coma experience. Edgar Cayce's readings emphasize that coma experiences serve not only the spiritual development of the unconscious individual, but also provide profound learning opportunities for family members and caregivers who participate in these sacred journeys. The challenges, uncertainties, and spiritual openings that families experience during coma situations often catalyze significant spiritual growth, teaching lessons about unconditional love, surrender, faith, and the eternal nature of consciousness that might not be learned through other life experiences. The Sleeping Prophet recommended that families approach coma situations as spiritual opportunities rather than merely medical crises, maintaining hope and positive energy while simultaneously surrendering outcomes to divine will. This balanced approach involves actively participating in healing efforts through prayer, meditation, communication, and loving care, while releasing attachment to specific outcomes and trusting that whatever unfolds serves the highest good of all involved. This spiritual perspective transforms family stress into opportunities for spiritual development and deeper relationships. Practical support strategies based on Cayce's insights include establishing regular prayer or meditation schedules in the patient's presence, creating peaceful environments that support spiritual work, maintaining natural conversation and physical contact, and documenting any signs or communications that might provide guidance or comfort. These practices help families feel actively involved in their loved one's journey while creating optimal conditions for healing and spiritual communication. Cayce stressed the importance of family members maintaining their own physical and emotional health during extended coma situations, recognizing that their well-being directly affects the spiritual environment surrounding the patient. Taking breaks, seeking support from spiritual communities, and engaging in personal healing practices ensures that families can provide sustained, loving energy throughout the journey. Self-care becomes a spiritual practice that serves the entire family system during these challenging periods. The grief and uncertainty inherent in coma situations often open family members to spiritual experiences, enhanced intuition, and deeper connection with spiritual guides and deceased loved ones who assist during these times. Cayce encouraged families to remain open to these spiritual communications and experiences, which often provide guidance, comfort, and reassurance that their loved one is receiving optimal spiritual care. These spiritual openings frequently become lasting sources of comfort and spiritual development for family members. Edgar Cayce's profound insights about souls in coma states reveal the magnificent spiritual realities that operate beyond our physical perception, transforming our understanding of consciousness from materialistic limitations to expansive spiritual truth. His revelations demonstrate that what appears as unconsciousness to medical observation may actually represent heightened spiritual activity, purposeful soul work, and profound healing opportunities that serve both individual evolution and collective spiritual growth. These insights from the Association for Research and Enlightenment archives continue providing comfort and understanding to families navigating these mysterious experiences. The Sleeping Prophet's descriptions of spiritual healing temples, educational realms, and communication centers accessible to souls in coma offer hope and meaning during humanity's most challenging medical situations. Rather than viewing coma as tragic loss of consciousness, we can recognize these states as potential spiritual opportunities where souls engage in accelerated learning, karmic healing, and service activities that might require lifetimes to accomplish through normal physical existence. Modern consciousness research, near-death experience studies, and thousands of family testimonials continue validating Cayce's revolutionary insights about consciousness operating independently of brain function. This growing evidence base supports the reality of spiritual dimensions, soul survival, and the profound purposes served by altered consciousness states. These validations encourage us to approach coma situations with reverence, spiritual openness, and trust in the soul's wisdom. Understanding coma as spiritual opportunity transforms our approach to these experiences, encouraging families to participate actively through prayer, meditation, communication, and loving support, while surrendering outcomes to divine wisdom. This balanced approach honors both human love and spiritual truth, creating optimal conditions for whatever healing, learning, or transition serves the soul's highest evolution and the family's spiritual development. The sacred mystery of consciousness continues revealing itself through experiences that challenge our limited physical perceptions and invite us into deeper spiritual understanding. Edgar Cayce's legacy reminds us that consciousness is eternal, purposeful, and magnificently creative, operating through dimensions of reality that exceed our current comprehension. May his insights about souls in coma inspire continued spiritual exploration, compassionate care, and trust in the infinite wisdom guiding every soul's journey through all dimensions of existence. They say the greatest prison is the one we build inside our own soul, but what if that prison follows us beyond death? According to Edgar Cayce, one of the most documented spiritual prophets in history, the inability to forgive doesn't end when life does. It continues, echoing in the afterlife as a spiritual weight the soul cannot escape. Cayce described forgiveness not as a moral suggestion, but as a law of vibration. When we die holding anger, resentment, or guilt, our soul remains bound to the very pain we refuse to release. The act of not forgiving, Cayce said, is a chain that keeps the spirit anchored to the lower planes of existence, unable to move toward the light it seeks. Imagine reaching the other side only to discover that the person you couldn't forgive is still there, not as a punishment from God, but as a mirror of your own unfinished lesson. This isn't superstition. It's the consequence of energy, thought, and spiritual law. So let me ask you, if your life ended tonight, is there someone you still haven't forgiven? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because the truth that Cayce revealed about forgiveness might change how you see your entire life. When Edgar Cayce spoke about forgiveness, he wasn't talking about a simple moral act. He described it as a spiritual frequency, an energy that determines whether the soul rises toward divine light or remains bound to the darkness it created through resentment. To him, every thought and emotion leaves a vibration in the soul, and these vibrations are what shape the conditions of our next experience, whether in this world or beyond it. When a person dies holding anger or hatred, Cayce said, that energy becomes a wall between the soul and God's presence. It isn't God who punishes. It's the soul that imprisons itself in the very state it refused to let go of. The act of forgiveness is liberation, a release of spiritual tension that allows the divine light to penetrate where bitterness once lived. Cayce often explained that every grudge, every wound kept alive by pride, becomes a form of spiritual gravity, pulling us down toward planes where pain, confusion, and regret still dominate the atmosphere. He described the soul's passage after death as a journey through consciousness, not a place of fire but of reflection. The soul meets the energy it created, its own thoughts, emotions, and intentions. If love dominates, the path is luminous and calm. But if resentment lingers, the soul finds itself surrounded by shadows that are not external demons, but its own projections. Cayce's readings show that those who pass without forgiving often experience an immediate awareness of the opportunities they wasted on earth. They see how small arguments, harsh words, and silent bitterness became barriers to peace. The realization brings a profound sorrow, not because of divine punishment, but because the soul finally understands what love was supposed to mean. It sees clearly how forgiveness was never for others. It was the soul's medicine all along. Forgiveness, in Cayce's view, is the key that unlocks the higher realms of spiritual evolution. He said that without it, the spirit cannot move closer to Christ consciousness, the state of perfect unity with God. Those who resist forgiveness often wander in realms of grey light, neither fully dark nor radiant, where they relive moments that still demand reconciliation. These souls aren't lost forever. Cayce was clear that every soul is destined to return to the light, but the time it takes depends on the willingness to release pain. The longer the resentment is held, the longer the distance from the divine becomes. In his readings, Cayce revealed that Jesus' teaching about forgiveness wasn't symbolic. It was literal spiritual law. Forgive 70 times 7 meant not only an act toward others, but the purification of the soul's own vibration. There's a kind of divine mathematics in this. Every act of forgiveness multiplies light. Every act of hatred multiplies darkness. Cayce described this as cause and effect in the spiritual dimension. The soul creates its heaven or its hell by the energy it maintains. A person who cannot forgive carries that energy even beyond the grave, unable to see the beauty of heaven because their inner eyes are still blinded by resentment. And so, forgiveness becomes not a virtue, but survival of the spirit. It's the only bridge between pain and peace, between earth and eternity. Cayce once said that the greatest healing any human can experience begins in the heart. No medicine, no ritual, no prayer can fully heal a soul that still clings to hatred. In his readings, he often emphasized that spiritual healing and physical healing are deeply connected. Many illnesses, he explained, begin not in the body, but in the emotions that the person refuses to release. Resentment poisons the nervous system. Guilt disrupts the flow of energy through the spirit. When a person forgives, the vibration of the body changes, the cells respond differently, and divine energy begins to circulate again. Forgiveness is more than a decision. It's a spiritual realignment. To forgive is to tune your soul back to the frequency of God. Cayce believed that Jesus came not to create a religion, but to reveal that forgiveness was the only way to return to the source. He described the soul's journey after death as a continuation of this same process. Those who die without forgiving are often drawn to realms of confusion and silence. There they encounter images of the people they hurt or refuse to forgive. It isn't punishment, it's an opportunity to understand, to finally feel what they made others feel. Cayce said that every thought of judgment we hold becomes a mirror in the afterlife. Those mirrors reflect not our enemies, but our unfinished lessons. Our soul trapped by anger doesn't see God as he is. It sees him through the distortion of its own wounds. That's why, in Cayce's vision, hell isn't a place of fire. It's a state of consciousness unable to recognize love. The longer the soul resists, the denser its reality becomes, until it finally surrenders and asks for the light. And that light always answers. Cayce was clear. No soul is ever abandoned. Divine mercy is infinite, but it cannot enter a closed heart. Forgiveness opens that door. The moment a soul chooses to forgive, even after death, its vibration rises instantly. The gray becomes gold, the silence becomes music, and the presence of God begins to fill every corner of its being. The forgiveness we refuse in life must eventually be learned in spirit, because evolution demands it. Cayce compared this to spiritual gravity. No matter how far a soul falls, it will always be pulled back to its creator. But the journey home depends on how much resistance remains inside. Maybe that's why Jesus spent so much of his time teaching about mercy, compassion, and love for one's enemies. Cayce saw those teachings as universal laws, not moral advice. Every time we forgive, we release the weight that separates us from God. Every time we refuse, we bind ourselves to the pain we think belongs to someone else. Forgiveness is the end of illusion. It's seeing the divine spark even in those who hurt us. That's what Jesus meant when he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Cayce interpreted that moment as the greatest act of spiritual mastery in history, the human self dissolving into divine consciousness. If you've ever struggled to forgive someone, remember that Cayce's message wasn't about pretending nothing happened. It was about freeing yourself from the vibration of pain. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into wisdom. It doesn't deny justice. It removes hatred from justice so that truth can heal instead of destroy. Right now, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what energy do I want to carry beyond this life? Light or darkness? Love or resentment? You can choose at this moment to release what your soul was never meant to hold. Before we continue, take a second to support this reflection. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts below. Who do you still need to forgive, and why do you think it's so hard to let go? Your comment might help someone else find peace. Cayce explained that many souls return to Earth carrying unfinished emotions from other lives. The inability to forgive becomes a thread that connects one incarnation to the next. It's not fate, it's vibration. When a person dies holding resentment, that energy remains active until it is balanced. In a later life, they might meet the same soul in a new form, a family member, a friend, or even an enemy, to face the same lesson again. This, Cayce said, is how divine justice operates, not as punishment, but as opportunity. Every encounter is designed to heal what was once broken. The soul that once hated may now have the chance to love, and through that act, rise higher than before. Forgiveness, therefore, isn't just about peace in this life. It's about freeing your future self from the chains of yesterday. He also revealed that the moment of death is not an end, but a continuation of consciousness. When the soul leaves the body, it immediately faces the spiritual equivalent of its own state of mind. Cayce described this as a vibration match. A forgiving heart rises naturally to planes of harmony, surrounded by other luminous souls. But one who dies in bitterness feels drawn to the lower spheres, where similar vibrations gather, souls still angry, confused, or lost. There, the lesson continues. The soul begins to see that the suffering it blames on others is the same energy it keeps alive within itself. Forgiveness then becomes an awakening, a realization that no one can truly harm the eternal spirit. Only the ego can be wounded, and only love can dissolve that illusion. In his readings, Cayce often referred to the Christ pattern as the ultimate example of what a forgiven soul becomes. He said that Christ consciousness is not limited to Jesus. It is the potential of every human spirit. When we forgive, we activate that divine pattern within us. The more we resist, the farther we drift from it. He explained that prayer and meditation can help soften the heart, but true transformation happens when action follows understanding. To say, "I forgive," is not enough. The soul must feel it deeply, replacing judgment with compassion. Cayce urged people to remember that every person who causes pain is themselves in pain, trapped in their own cycle of ignorance. To see this is to awaken spiritually. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's power. It's the decision to rise above the lower vibrations that dominate the human world. Cayce said that the soul's evolution depends on its ability to love the unlovable, to bless the undeserving, and to see God even in the broken. Every time you forgive, you align yourself with divine will, and unseen forces begin to move in your favor. You become lighter, freer, closer to your true nature, and that light travels with you beyond death. Those who die in peace with no hatred in their hearts experience what Cayce described as an immediate reunion with higher consciousness, a feeling of indescribable freedom. They remember who they are, where they came from, and why they came to Earth, to learn how to love as God loves. But those who leave this world still chained by resentment experience a very different awakening. In their first moments beyond the body, they feel confusion, an ache that has no physical source. They see flashes of their life, moments where they could have chosen love but didn't. It's not punishment, it's awareness. In that instant, the soul understands that the only real sin was separation from love. Some souls, Cayce said, take longer to accept this. They wander in twilight realms surrounded by their own echoing thoughts until compassion begins to rise within them again. Then, slowly, they forgive, and instantly, light returns. Cayce's teachings remind us that every soul carries within it the image of God, but that image becomes hidden when the heart is closed. Forgiveness is what cleanses that image until it shines again. He said that prayer is powerful, but it only reaches its full strength when it comes from a heart free of bitterness. Many people, he noted, pray for peace while still holding anger against their brothers and sisters. That contradiction blocks divine energy like a stone in a river. Only through forgiveness does the current of God's love flow again. Cayce emphasized that forgiveness must begin inwardly. We cannot truly forgive others until we forgive ourselves. Many souls, he said, suffer not because of others' cruelty, but because they cannot accept their own mistakes. This self-rejection creates spiritual blindness, preventing them from seeing that they are still loved by the Creator. In his readings, Cayce described how the soul that refuses self-forgiveness experiences a kind of inner darkness after death. It sees its past actions replayed before it, not as judgment, but as illumination. The soul witnesses every moment it denied love, every chance it had to bring healing and didn't. Yet even then God's voice is gentle. It whispers, "You are still mine." Forgiveness, therefore, is not an emotion, it's an awakening to truth. When the soul finally accepts divine mercy, the pain dissolves like mist under sunlight. Cayce insisted that no matter how terrible one's life has been, no one is beyond redemption. The door to light is never locked. It simply waits for humility. He also said that Jesus Christ embodied the perfect vibration of forgiveness. To follow Christ, Cayce explained, is not to repeat his words, but to match his frequency. Every act of mercy aligns us with the Christ pattern. When you forgive someone who hurt you deeply, you recreate a small portion of the cross, not in suffering but in transformation. The cross, Cayce said, was the meeting point of human pain and divine love. It represents the moment when darkness was absorbed by light through forgiveness. That same power exists in you. Every time you release anger, you participate in that same redemption. Forgiveness is the soul's return to order. It heals relationships, restores purpose, and even changes physical reality. Cayce described how thoughts of compassion send real vibrations into the universe that attract harmony and health. When we forgive, we literally alter the spiritual atmosphere around us. Angels, he said, are drawn to forgiving hearts because those hearts emit light they can recognize. The universe itself bends toward love. So if you're watching this and you're still holding something inside, anger toward someone who betrayed you, resentment toward a parent, guilt for what you couldn't fix, remember this: God isn't waiting for perfect people, only for open hearts. The soul that forgives steps into eternal freedom. The soul that refuses remains trapped in its own creation. You have the power to decide which world you inhabit, now and after death. Cayce's words were not meant to scare, but to awaken. He wanted us to understand that the laws of the Spirit are as real as gravity. Every choice matters. Forgiveness may feel impossible, but it is the highest form of faith, to trust that love is stronger than pain. In one of his most profound readings, Edgar Cayce said that the soul's journey after death is simply the continuation of what it practiced on earth. If a person lived in love, peace, and forgiveness, they crossed the threshold with calmness, embraced by light. But if they lived with bitterness, envy, or anger, the crossing is heavy. The soul feels weighed down, unable to rise, as if chained to its old emotions. It doesn't find torment outside. It meets the torment it never resolved within. Cayce described this as the magnetic field of thought, where each vibration attracts its likeness. A forgiving soul rises effortlessly because it carries no density. An unforgiving one must first face itself until the burden is released. This is why Jesus' call to forgive our enemies wasn't moral poetry. It was a map for spiritual survival. Forgiveness, Cayce said, is the highest expression of divine intelligence. It aligns human will with cosmic order. Each act of mercy creates harmony that extends far beyond what we can see. When a person forgives, they become a channel through which God's grace flows into the world. Cayce often told people that healing others begins with forgiveness, even if that forgiveness is never spoken aloud. Because in forgiving, we stop projecting pain and start radiating love. And that radiation, he said, is what heals nations, families, and souls alike. It is the vibration of Christ in action. Those who live by it don't just prepare for heaven, they bring a piece of heaven into every breath of life. Cayce also warned that refusing to forgive leads to stagnation, not only after death but during life. The heart grows colder, the mind restless, and the body begins to mirror the soul's tension. Diseases of the stomach, heart, and nerves often originate in unhealed emotions. To forgive is to release that inner poison. He saw this clearly in his healing sessions. Many people recovered physically only after forgiving someone or reconciling with themselves. He explained it simply: you cannot hold darkness in one hand and reach for the light with the other. That is the spiritual law. Forgiveness restores order to the soul's vibration. It brings the individual closer to Christ consciousness, the state of unity with the divine. Cayce urged his listeners to make forgiveness a daily discipline, like prayer or breathing. He said that even the smallest grudge is enough to cloud the soul's vision. To forgive doesn't mean to forget injustice. It means to release it to divine justice. When you forgive, you say to God, "I trust your wisdom more than my pain." And that surrender is what opens heaven's gates. So tonight, before you sleep, think of one person you still haven't forgiven. Not for them, for you. Let that weight fall away. Cayce said that every soul at some point must learn this lesson because love is the only vibration that endures eternity. And when you finally let go, you'll understand that forgiveness wasn't about weakness. It was about remembering who you really are, a child of God, created in light. If this message touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts below. Who do you need to forgive today? Your story might be the key to someone else's healing. On a cold February afternoon in 1934, in a modest reading room in Virginia Beach, Edgar Cayce was about to deliver one of the most profound revelations about human consciousness ever documented. The question had been haunting families across America during those harsh Depression years, when industrial accidents claimed lives in the most horrific ways imaginable. Our desperate mother, whose 19-year-old son had perished in a Chicago factory fire, sat trembling as she asked the question that would change everything we thought we knew about death, suffering, and the indestructible nature of the human soul. What Cayce revealed during that 47-minute trance session didn't just console a grieving family, it revolutionized our entire understanding of what happens to consciousness during the most extreme moments of physical trauma. The sleeping prophet was about to pull back the veil on one of humanity's deepest fears and reveal a truth so extraordinary that it would challenge every assumption about death by fire. Picture this scene for a moment. The scent of winter air, mixing with the faint aroma of burning coal from nearby homes. A mother's hands shaking as she clutched a photograph of her son, his bright smile forever frozen in time. The weight of unimaginable grief pressing down on everyone in that small room. And then, Edgar Cayce's voice, calm and otherworldly, beginning to speak truths that would echo through generations. The soul, he began in that distinctive trance voice that had diagnosed impossible illnesses and predicted events decades before they occurred, does not remain imprisoned within physical pain. There exists a divine mercy built into the very fabric of consciousness itself, a protection mechanism that activates when human suffering exceeds what the spirit can endure. But here's what nobody expected to hear on that winter day in Virginia Beach, something that would shatter every preconceived notion about death by fire. Cayce explained that in cases involving severe burns and fire-related deaths, something miraculous occurs within the first critical moments. The soul, that eternal spark of divine consciousness that inhabits our physical form, doesn't experience trauma the way our waking minds imagine it would. Instead, there's a phenomenon he described as compassionate displacement, a kind of spiritual anesthesia that the soul's own divine nature automatically activates when physical trauma exceeds human capacity for endurance. During that historic reading, Cayce detailed exactly how this process unfolds. Within the first seconds of extreme fire trauma, the soul begins what he called a gradual untethering from the physical body. It's as if some ancient wisdom encoded in our spiritual essence recognizes the need to prepare for transition. This disconnection isn't sudden or jarring. It's gentle, progressive, and surrounded by what he described as legions of light beings who assist in the process. The soul rises, were Cayce's exact words that day, like sacred vapor that cannot be touched by earthly flames. It observes from a place of increasing peace, but does not inhabit the physical distress. What happened next in that reading session would forever transform our understanding of consciousness itself. Cayce began describing how souls departing through fire trauma frequently experience visions of intense, beautiful light, not the destructive orange flames of Earth, but a different kind of luminosity entirely. He called it the first glimpse of the eternal home, a preview of the magnificent reality awaiting beyond physical existence. But the most remarkable revelation was still to come. According to Cayce's trance state revelations, souls who transition through fire experiences carry with them a special marking, not of suffering, but of accelerated purification. It's as though the very element that causes destruction on the physical plane serves as a catalyst for rapid spiritual evolution on higher dimensions. This discovery was confirmed through multiple readings over the following years for other families who had lost loved ones in similar circumstances. In every single case, Cayce consistently described the same pattern. The soul not only survives the physical trauma completely intact, but emerges with expanded spiritual clarity and elevated consciousness. During the Great Depression, when industrial accidents were tragically common across American factories and mines, Cayce conducted dozens of readings for bereaved families. In one particularly powerful session from 1937, he explained that souls who transition through fire often become specialized guides for other souls facing fears about violent death or physical trauma. They transform into beacons of courage, Cayce explained during that memorable reading, demonstrating to other souls that even the most extreme methods of departure cannot damage our true essence or diminish our eternal nature. The depth of this revelation becomes even more profound when you consider what Cayce discovered about the soul's journey immediately following fire-related death. He described special healing chambers that exist in spiritual dimensions, spaces specifically designed for souls who have experienced traumatic physical transitions. In these ethereal sanctuaries, they receive a unique form of restoration that not only heals any residual memory of distress, but actually transforms the entire experience into spiritual strength and wisdom. In one of his most detailed readings on this subject, conducted for a family in Ohio whose father had died in a house fire, Cayce described the moment of final separation between soul and body. He explained that this transition is typically accompanied by what he called the gathering, a phenomenon where deceased loved ones and spiritual guides converge to welcome and assist the departing soul. It is never a solitary journey, Cayce emphasized. The moment of departure through fire is surrounded by more love and support than the grieving mind can comprehend. What appears as lonely suffering to those who remain is actually a celebration of homecoming for the one who is transitioning. And then Cayce said something that sent chills through everyone present in that Virginia Beach reading room. Fire-related death, regardless of how terrifying it appears to earthly observers, is frequently chosen by the soul itself before incarnation as a rapid method for clearing dense karmic patterns and achieving swift advancement in spiritual consciousness. This revelation suggests that at the deepest spiritual level, some souls consciously select experiences that seem horrible from a human perspective, but serve greater evolutionary purposes. It's as if we're only seeing a tiny fragment of a much larger, more benevolent cosmic plan unfolding across multiple dimensions of existence. What makes this information even more extraordinary is how perfectly it aligns with near-death experience accounts from people who survived severe burn injuries. Many describe sensations of floating above their physical bodies, observing the situation with unusual calm and detachment. Exactly as Cayce had described decades before, such testimonies became widely documented. During the war years, when fire-related tragedies became even more frequent due to bombings and combat, Cayce's readings on this topic brought comfort to hundreds of American families. He consistently emphasized that the apparent brutality of death by burning is an illusion created by our limited three-dimensional perspective. In spiritual reality, the process is orchestrated with divine precision to minimize actual soul suffering while maximizing evolutionary benefit. One of Cayce's most fascinating discoveries involved what he called cellular memory transformation following this type of transition. He explained that souls who experienced fire-related death often maintain a special affinity for light in their subsequent incarnations. They frequently return as artists who work with luminosity, scientists studying photonics, engineers developing safety equipment, or simply individuals who bring an unusual quality of brightness and warmth to others' lives. Earthly fire forges spiritual gold was one of Cayce's favorite phrases when explaining this phenomenon. He described how the very element that causes physical destruction becomes, paradoxically, an agent of extreme spiritual refinement and purification. Further into his decades of research, Cayce discovered a correlation between souls who had transitioned through fire and the development of specific psychic abilities in future lifetimes. Many developed healing capabilities involving energy work, proficiency with light therapy, or even prophetic gifts related to preventing similar tragedies from occurring. In a particularly profound reading from 1941, Cayce revealed that the exact moment of soul-body separation in fire-related deaths is frequently accompanied by visions of deceased family members and beloved friends. These spiritual presences act as rescue teams who facilitate the transition and ensure the departing soul experiences no confusion or disorientation during the process of leaving physical form. This discovery revolutionized understanding because it indicated that traumatic death isn't a solitary event. It's surrounded by invisible love and spiritual support that may not be visible to physical eyes, but is absolutely real to the consciousness making the transition. Perhaps the most comforting aspect of Cayce's revelations on this subject was his consistent emphasis that the soul maintains complete individuality and precious memories intact throughout the process. What fire destroys is merely the temporary physical vehicle. The true essence of the person, with all their unique characteristics, love experiences, and special bonds with others, remains perfectly preserved and actually enhanced. During sessions where families sought communication with loved ones who had departed through fire, Cayce frequently described these souls as radiating a special quality of peace and luminosity. They had undergone what he termed a baptism of fire that had literally burned away spiritual impurities and left them with extraordinary clarity of purpose and expanded compassion. One of the most touching revelations came during a reading for a young widow whose husband had perished in a residential fire in Detroit. Cayce explained that her husband's soul had not only achieved perfect well-being, but had become what he called a specialist in comfort, a spiritual being whose personal experience qualified him to assist other souls facing similar transitions. He now lights candles of hope where previously there was only darkness, were the exact words Cayce used to describe this phenomenon of post-death transformation and service. What emerged from years of Cayce's readings on fire-related death is a completely different picture than what most people imagine about burning to death. Instead of prolonged horror and suffering, he consistently described a process of gradual liberation, surrounded by spiritual protection and culminating in accelerated consciousness elevation. Perhaps most impressive is how these revelations from the 1930s and 1940s align perfectly with modern discoveries about altered states of consciousness during extreme trauma. Contemporary research into near-death experiences confirms many of the phenomena Cayce described. Out-of-body sensations, encounters with deceased loved ones, visions of brilliant light, life reviews, and profound transformations in perspective about death and existence. In the archives at Virginia Beach, hundreds of documented cases exist where families reported dreams or experiences in which loved ones who died in fires appeared to communicate their condition of well-being. These accounts consistently describe the departed souls as surrounded by light, radiating peace, and often carrying messages about the illusory nature of physical suffering. One of Cayce's deepest discoveries was his revelation that souls transitioning through traumatic fire experiences frequently choose to return as guardians against similar tragedies. They reincarnate as inventors of safety equipment, firefighters with unusual intuition about dangerous situations, legislators who create protective fire codes, or simply as individuals with special sensitivity to fire-related dangers. This perspective completely transforms our understanding of the purpose behind apparently random traumatic death. According to Cayce, nothing occurs by chance. Every experience, even the most difficult ones, serves a greater evolutionary purpose that our limited perspective rarely allows us to perceive clearly. Throughout his decades of work, Cayce never encountered a single case where a soul who had transitioned through fire was lost or suffering in spiritual dimensions. On the contrary, he consistently described them as among the most luminous and compassionate beings in higher realms of existence. Earthly fire cannot touch the divine fire that we truly are, was one of the most memorable phrases that emerged during one of his deepest readings on this subject. This statement perfectly encapsulates his vision of the indestructible nature of human consciousness and spiritual identity. What makes these revelations even more significant is how they offer a completely new perspective on grief and loss. Instead of focusing on imagined horrors of the death moment, Cayce's readings consistently redirected attention toward consciousness, continuity, and the positive transformation that often results from experiences that appear devastating from a physical standpoint. For those who have lost loved ones in fire-related circumstances, Cayce's words offer not just comfort, but a completely transformed understanding of human existence itself. They suggest we are far more resilient and eternal than our physical experience allows us to perceive. This shift in perspective doesn't deny the natural pain of grief, but it contextualizes mourning within a larger vision of life's purpose and continuity. According to Cayce, tears for those who have departed are natural and healthy, but they can be accompanied by certainty that the beloved person's true essence not only survived intact, but was elevated through the experience. The readings also revealed fascinating details about how these souls often maintain connection with surviving family members. Cayce described how souls who transitioned through fire frequently become especially active in protecting their living loved ones from similar dangers. Many families reported unusual incidents where they felt warned away from potentially dangerous fire situations, or experienced strong intuitions that led them to install safety equipment or avoid hazardous circumstances. In one remarkable case from 1943, Cayce conducted a reading for a mother whose teenage daughter had died in a school fire. During the session, he revealed that the daughter's soul was now working closely with other spiritual beings to inspire improvements in school fire safety across the nation. The mother later discovered that new fire safety legislation had been introduced in Congress just weeks after her daughter's death, legislation that would eventually save thousands of lives. This concept of continued service and protection from the spiritual realm offered grieving families a sense of ongoing connection and purpose in their loss. It suggested that death, even traumatic death, was not an ending, but a transformation into a different form of loving service. Cayce's readings consistently emphasize that souls who experience fire-related death often report from the spirit realm that they feel grateful for the rapid spiritual advancement their transition provided. While this might seem impossible to understand from our earthly perspective, it reflects the soul's eternal viewpoint, where temporary physical experiences are seen within the context of infinite existence and continuous growth. The healing implications of these revelations extended far beyond individual comfort for grieving families. Cayce explained that understanding the true nature of fire-related death could help eliminate one of humanity's deepest primal fears, allowing people to live with greater courage and less anxiety about potential suffering. Fear of death by fire, Cayce explained in a reading from 1945, is often a memory carried from past life experiences. When we understand the soul's true invulnerability, this fear dissolves, and we are freed to live more boldly in service to others. This observation led to one of Cayce's most profound insights about the purpose of his revelations on this subject. He suggested that widespread understanding of the soul's indestructibility could help humanity evolve beyond paralyzing fears that prevent full engagement with life's opportunities and challenges. The readings also detailed how souls who had transitioned through fire often played special roles in what Cayce called the cosmic curriculum, a grand educational system operating across dimensions where souls learn through diverse experiences. Those who had mastered the fear of fire through direct experience became teachers and guides for others still learning to overcome similar fears. In several readings, Cayce described how these souls would sometimes visit people in dreams to offer comfort and wisdom about overcoming fear-based limitations. Recipients of such dream visits often reported profound transformations in their ability to face challenges with courage and trust. One of the most scientifically intriguing aspects of Cayce's revelations involved his descriptions of how fire-related death affects the soul's energy signature. He explained that passing through intense heat and light creates a kind of crystallization of the soul's luminous properties, resulting in beings who radiate unusual levels of spiritual light in higher dimensions. This transformation, according to Cayce, makes these souls particularly effective at healing work in spiritual realms. They become specialists in helping other souls release fears and traumas, using their own transformed experience as a source of healing power. The practical implications of these revelations for those still in physical form are profound. Cayce suggested that understanding the true nature of fire-related death could inspire people to live more fully, knowing that even the worst imaginable physical fate cannot truly harm our essential being. He also emphasized that souls who had transitioned through fire often communicated strong messages about the importance of love and forgiveness while still in physical form. Having experienced the rapid spiritual advancement possible through intense challenges, they urged their living loved ones to focus on expressing love rather than harboring resentments or fears. In reading after reading, families reported receiving communications or signs from departed loved ones, emphasizing themes of love, courage, service to others, and trust in the benevolent nature of existence. These messages consistently reflected the elevated perspective these souls had gained through their transition experience. Cayce's work on this subject culminated in what many consider one of his most important spiritual teachings, that every soul is eternal, indestructible, and constantly evolving toward greater love and wisdom. Physical experiences, even traumatic ones, serve this evolutionary process but cannot diminish or damage the soul's essential divine nature. We are beings of light temporarily wearing garments of flesh, was how Cayce summarized this understanding. When the garment is damaged beyond repair, we simply remove it and continue our eternal journey in forms more suited to our spiritual development. This perspective offers profound comfort to anyone facing fears about physical vulnerability or traumatic death. It suggests that while we should certainly take reasonable precautions to protect our physical well-being, we need not live in terror of possibilities beyond our control. The transformative power of Cayce's revelations about fire-related death extends to how we view all forms of suffering and challenge. If souls can not only survive but actually benefit spiritually from the most extreme physical trauma, then perhaps all difficult experiences carry hidden gifts of growth and awakening. For first responders, medical professionals, and others who regularly encounter fire-related tragedies, Cayce's insights offer a radically different framework for understanding their work. Instead of witnessing only destruction and suffering, they can recognize their role in assisting souls through important transitions, surrounded by invisible spiritual support and heading toward elevated states of being. The readings also provided guidance for how the living can best honor and support loved ones who have transitioned through fire. Cayce emphasized that grief is natural and healthy, but it should be accompanied by celebration of the soul's continued existence and spiritual advancement. He suggested that prayers, meditation, and acts of service in memory of the departed actually reach and support these souls in their new roles in spiritual dimensions. One of the most practical applications of these teachings involves releasing guilt or regret about being unable to prevent such deaths. Cayce consistently emphasized that souls choose their departure methods and timing on a spiritual level that transcends human understanding. Survivors need not burden themselves with what-if scenarios or self-blame about circumstances beyond their control. Instead, Cayce encouraged family members and friends to focus on living fully and lovingly in honor of those who have transitioned. He explained that this positive response to loss actually creates spiritual connections that benefit both the living and the departed, fostering continued relationship across dimensional boundaries. The healing power of these revelations has continued to manifest in the decades since Cayce's own transition. Thousands of people have reported profound comfort and transformation from understanding the true nature of consciousness and its indestructibility, even under the most extreme physical circumstances. Mental health professionals working with trauma survivors and bereaved families have noted how Cayce's perspective can facilitate healing by shifting focus from imagined suffering to spiritual continuity and growth. This doesn't minimize the reality of loss or the natural process of grief, but it provides a context of meaning and hope within which healing can occur. The broader implications of Cayce's work on this subject extend to questions about the nature of reality itself. If consciousness truly is indestructible and capable of growth through even the most challenging experiences, then perhaps our entire understanding of life's purpose needs expansion. Rather than viewing existence primarily as an attempt to avoid suffering, we might see it as an opportunity for spiritual development that continues regardless of physical circumstances. This shift in perspective has inspired countless individuals to live more courageously, love more openly, and serve others more generously, knowing that their essential being cannot be threatened by external circumstances, no matter how challenging they might appear. For researchers and scientists studying consciousness, near-death experiences, and the nature of human awareness, Cayce's detailed descriptions from the 1930s and 1940s provide a remarkably consistent framework that aligns with contemporary findings. His work suggests that consciousness studies might benefit from seriously considering the possibility that awareness itself is far more fundamental and durable than current materialistic models assume. The evidential aspects of Cayce's revelations about fire-related death include numerous cases where specific information about departed individuals proved accurate when verified with family members. These validations suggest that his trance state truly accessed information beyond normal sensory channels, lending credibility to the profound spiritual insights he provided. Edgar Cayce's revelations about what happens to the soul of someone who burns to death offer a vision radically different from what fear and ignorance typically construct. Instead of prolonged agony, he describes compassionate liberation. Instead of spiritual destruction, he reveals accelerated purification. Instead of tragic endings, he glimpses luminous new beginnings filled with expanded service and love. For those carrying the pain of having lost someone in fire-related circumstances, his words echo across the decades with a clear message. Love is truly indestructible. Consciousness is genuinely eternal. And even in moments that appear most dark, benevolent forces are working to transform apparent tragedy into profound spiritual advancement and expanded capacity for service. This understanding doesn't diminish the importance of physical safety or accident prevention. Rather, it inspires us to value physical life even more as a sacred gift and opportunity for growth. But it also liberates us from paralyzing terror about possibilities of extreme suffering, allowing us to live with greater courage, compassion, and trust in the ultimate goodness of existence. If these revelations have touched something deep within your soul, if they've offered you a new perspective on the indestructible nature of love and consciousness, you're joining a community of seekers who have found in Edgar Cayce's work not just comfort, but a complete transformation in how they understand life, death, and the eternal purpose of human existence. The light that cannot be extinguished by any earthly fire continues to shine within you, connecting you to the eternal truth that we are all beings of light on an incredible journey of awakening.